Arsenal have just crushed Atletico Madrid by 4-0, and in this video we're going to be breaking down how they did it. We're going to be taking a look at the tactics that Mikel Arteta used to create an enormous amount of pressure on that steely Atletico defence, and we're going to be showcasing how Arsenal scored 4 goals in just 13 minutes to give themselves yet another crucial win in the Champions League. Arsenal were superb in this game, and that's for many reasons, but in particular for me, the way they were able to pressurise this Atletico defence, this strong Atletico defence, and they managed to do that by preventing overloads in certain channels that allowed Arsenal to maintain a dominance and a pressure that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to. Typically, when you have Arsenal's 4-3-3 system, utilising those 5 attackers and those 5 defenders, you can sometimes get overloads, in particular utilising those defensive wide players for Atletico, giving themselves double ups on both Martinelli and Bukayo Saka. It can at times make things very difficult, but what Mikel Arteta did was change the way that he utilised his fullbacks, in particular the positioning and the passive positioning that he had Mars Lewis-Skelly and Jurrien Timber take. In pushing them forwards and having them take really aggressive positions almost next to their respective wingers gave Atletico a massive problem. It forced both of their wingers to be honest, and by that I mean that they needed to make sure that they were marking those fullbacks to prevent those 2v1 situations on their fullbacks. What this did then was give a number of different 1v1 situations for both Martinelli and Saka to start to drive in field. And I've got an illustration for you right here. Jurrien Timber is closest to your screen, playing a 1-2 with Bukayo Saka, but notice where he is on the pitch. He's incredibly close to the penalty area. And if you look on the far side, Martinelli has drifted in field, but look at the positioning of Mars Lewis-Skelly. Look how aggressive he is. And as well as that, look at the positioning of that Atletico winger. He's tucked in next to his fullback in the penalty area. It was through this passive positioning that gave Arsenal the dominance that they required to continue to attack this Atletico defence and inevitably break through at a certain moment. It was through this that Bukayo Saka and Martinelli were able to make darting, driving runs, overload certain situations, and eventually come up with a number of different dangerous opportunities. But with Arsenal, we know that they don't need to rely on open play goals. They can instead utilise their superior set-piece taking ability. And in this particular case, this is what gave them the breakthrough. A fantastic Declan Rice cross linking up with Gabriel as it gets whipped in. The pass and the cross for this is absolutely sublime because it gives Atletico almost no chance. It leaves the goalkeeper in no man's land and forces a confusion between the Atletico defenders. But let's take it back for just a moment, because if we think about the positioning of Gabriel, this is your goal scorer, and he's going to start to make a darting run into the penalty area. But what ends up happening is, due to the great cross and the positioning that the cross ends up going to, it leaves these Atletico defenders in such a conundrum, because once the ball gets whipped through, you've got the pressure of Gabriel there. He knows that he's there, but once the ball starts to take flight and once the shape of the cross begins to become apparent, he believes that his goalkeeper might come for it. And this is where the goalkeeper issue comes in, because the goalkeeper doesn't want to come for it because it's too close to the players. And this is why the cross is so good. It leaves the Atletico defence in such a problem that they aren't able to deal with it, leaving Gabriel with something of a free header. The defender doesn't want to go for it, the goalkeeper doesn't feel comfortable in going for it, and that leaves a huge gap for that towering centre-back to fire home the first goal. 6 minutes later, we have this moment, and what a moment it is. What a player Miles Lewis-Skelly is, and he's about to demonstrate it right here. But notice the positioning of the Atletico right winger. He's right on Miles Lewis-Skelly, terrified about what he could do, and that's for good reason, as we're about to see. He shrugs off the winger and then drives through the heart of this Atletico midfield. Julian Alvarez tries to stop him, but he's unable to. Conor Gallagher moves across to try and break down the space, but he's unable to. As Miles Lewis-Skelly drives forwards, we're then reminded of what we spoke about a little bit earlier, remembering those 1v1 situations between winger and fullback for Atletico. Martinelli has positioned himself absolutely brilliantly on the outside of this Atletico fullback, and as it gets passed through, Miles Lewis-Skelly has the composure, he has the awareness to play through his winger, but it's all about the weight of pass and the ability for Martinelli to take this shot with his first touch. That is imperative. That is the most important and crucial point, because if he takes a touch, it's likely that the Atletico players would be able to come back and make a block. They are unable to in this particular moment, and it's all about that first time connection, whipping the ball through into that far corner. A fantastic shot, but make no mistake about it, it was created by the genius and quality of Miles Lewis-Skelly. A fantastic goal. It only took 3 minutes for goal number 3 to come about, and it was done pretty brilliantly. We are yet again reminded about the 1v1 duels that are happening on both sides of the pitch. Bukayo Saka doing exactly the same on the other side, running in beyond, taking that space in beyond this Atletico defence that's trying to push forwards because they are 2 goals down. As it goes forwards, Martinelli has the composure to be able to cross it into the box, and that's where Arsenal's new striker comes in, because that's exactly where you want him, entering the penalty area ready to take a moment. As the ball gets crossed in by Martinelli, it's about whether any kind of ricochet, any kind of second ball can be then recycled through into your striker, and it absolutely can, through Emirates. He gets the ball to Gyökeres, who controls it pretty brilliantly. I think we need to take note of that, because it gets fired in at him by Eze, but he controls it in brilliant fashion, and he gets a little bit of fortune. Strikers earn their luck sometimes, and I believe that's exactly what happened here. It gets ricocheted through, and it goes off into the net. It was a brilliant goal, really, and it showcases that Victor Gyökeres is just about to get off the mark properly for Arsenal, and I think he's going to score quite a lot of goals. A few moments later, you have Arsenal's 4th and final goal, and it feels somewhat poetic for it to be another set piece, another perfectly executed Declan Rice cross going over towards, yep, you guessed it, Gabriel once more. But this time the variation is a little bit different. This time we have Gabriel running from deep, starting off towards the edge of the box. He gets something of a block here, as you can see highlighted. He runs round towards that back post, but we also need to take stock of where Victor Gyökeres is. Of course, he is our goal scorer here, just in the centre of the box. So as the ball gets whipped round, and as Gabriel managed to get a march onto that Atletico defence, we need to note where Gyökeres is, right where you want him, in the centre of the box, in that 6-yard area between the posts, exactly where you want your striker to be. And again, he gets his reward for being in the right place at the right time. It is a brilliant header, a back across goal by Gabriel, absolutely fantastic, completing that Declan Rice cross. So good. And here you get another angle at it. You've got Gabriel just headering the ball back across goal. You've got Victor Gyökeres ready to pounce. He's there in the right moment, and as I said, he's starting to fire. It's going to get pretty scary for the teams coming up against Arsenal, because he's starting to really get to grips with this Arsenal side. He of course scores, and it makes it 4-0. Another sensational performance for Arsenal, yet to really be challenged in this Champions League so far. Will they get challenged later on? Time will tell. I think they could be one of the favourites to win the entire tournament. But of course, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you. What did you make of Arsenal? What did you make of Atletico Madrid? And what do you make of Arsenal's Champions League hopes? Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you ever so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.